to imagine all life as you know it stopping instantaneously and every molecule in your body exploding at the speed of light.
Total protonic reversal.
Protonic reversal.
Protonic reversal with your host, Conan Neutron. Broadcasting from a secret underground lair in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
A gigantic middle finger to everything that is rock about music, rock and roll, and corporate power.
The thing is, though, if you don't laugh, you're going to go on a killing spree with sharpened nails.
Confidence of a hero or a fool. I wasn't exactly certain which.
Could not be more professional.
It's only one I choose to devote my life to. That's okay.
It means something. It means something.
And they got away.
You know, that's my take on it. What's yours?
Protonic reversal.
That's like a science thing, right?
Indeed it is. It's a science thing. It is a science place. It's a scientific fact that we're all up in your face. It is time once again for the one, the only Protonic Reversal. Welcome to it. Welcome to it. Welcome to it. Tonight we got a band of brothers. Tonight. It's not often you say that. It's not on, was that HBO, AMC? I can't remember. It doesn't matter. But very excited to talk to the bros Stahl, the Stahl bros, if you will. And there's a lot of Scream news, a lot of Scream activity. And we aren't talking about Fakakta movies. We're talking about the band, people. And very, very thrilled to do this very special episode. It's very, very, very. But before we get into any of that business, welcome to Conan Neutron's Protonic Reversal. I am your host, Conan Neutron. I'm a rock and roll lifer that's been touring and recording for 23 years, most known for the band Conan, Neutron, and the Secret Friends. Music is a huge part of my life, and I use the format of this very long-running podcast to talk about music with musicians whose work I enjoy and respect, but who may or may not be household names. This is episode 339. If this is your first time listening to the show, archives of it are available for free. No ads, no sponsors, no kidding at protonicreversal.com. However, if you want to support the show and get episodes sooner, $1 a month at patreon.com/protonicreversal will achieve that goal. Now, if you like the show, and even just a single episode, please feel free to like, subscribe on your platform of choice, share it around on the internet, and even leave a review. All that helps people discover the show, beat back the almighty algorithmic overlords. It's just a darn nice thing to do, really. So there you go. So without any further ado, I guess there's a little ado. I mean, if you don't know who the brothers Stahl are, I don't know what, you're not living your life right as far as I'm concerned. These guys are iconic. You know, if you've paid any attention, episodes in the past, especially anyone from the DC era, they'll talk about Scream and how incredible Scream is. Well, they're right. Is what I'm trying to tell you. So let's, without any further ado, let's talk to Pete Stahl. Pete, welcome to the show. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good, thank you.
And again, we got a double dose of Stahl here because we also have Franz as well. How you doing, sir?
Good. Do you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah, you sound great. You got it under the wire. It's like you're rushing on stage and like you're just plugging in the guitar and just going.
That certainly happened before.
It's so great to talk to you, gentlemen.
Likewise.
It's very exciting that there's been so much Scream activity, including at the time of this recording, like Monday, right? Like if I remember correctly, it was like a couple days ago, if I'm right.
Yeah, oh, I mean, we just played on Sunday in back home in DC.
Yeah.
Mount Pleasant at Lamont Plaza. It was a fantastic event for the book launch for the book, recent book that Antonia Chicario did on Don Zantera's Inner Ear Studio.
The Inner Ear book. Yeah. And that's, I was halfway trying to get you in before that, and I was like, it ain't happening, man. There's no way, like, unless we're doing it, like, right before they go on stage, I don't think it's going to be happening. But how did that go? I mean, that seems like that's such an incredible and important thing to document. I mean, Inner Ear was just, like, the place, right? I mean, there were so many great records that came out of there.
Yeah, I mean, the show was a good warm-up for us in more ways than one, because it was, like, about 90 degrees out, and we got to play in the sun. We're getting ready to do that later this summer in Europe, so
yeah,
a good warm up for that, and but also it was just a great event.
Great environment.
With a lot of people from the scene coming out, people from that community where we did the a show was near a gallery in Mount Pleasant that also has an installation that features a bunch of artwork that was on the walls at Inner Ear for years and years and years. Artwork that Don Zantera did, and also just stuff he'd collected over the years that was there. Amanda Mackay's band, Bedmaker, played, and this young band called Mashat Trace played. So it was cool because it was kind of multi-generational.
Yeah. Not just old heads. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But
it was multilingual too. They sung in Spanish.
Yeah, and being Father's Day, those guys in Mashat Trace, their dad got up and sang with them, and they were singing in Spanish. It was beautiful. It was a really good feeling. There's a lot of kids there, a lot of parents, and a lot of musicians, and it felt really like a great gathering of the community, the DC music community in that neighborhood as well.
I think those expressions of community are so important too, and that's something that. Again, it's great to have you guys on because I feel like Scream has been invoked many times on this show, especially like by anyone coming from.
Is it because you have a lot of technical problems, or?
No, but like as you know, I still remember that Jay Robbins kind of casually dropped playing with you guys, and like I didn't even notice until like later on, and I was like, oh wait, was that Scream? And then
yeah.
And because truth told, because I'm a West Coast guy. Like I live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, but I'm from California, and so therefore a lot of the East Coast bands, I knew like the records, but I never saw them or never knew from them. But I just feel like you guys are such an interesting locus point of like rock history over multiple generations, was not many bands can like pull off, and. Again, it must be so cool to be, playing like a multi-generational event where you have like actual, like descendants of other players like in their own
literally
bands, right?
Literally, yeah.
Exactly.
That's it's a gotta just so blessed to be able to still have an opportunity to play our music and people still into it. And having fun, and then bringing their kids, and also the challenge of that kind of show was also, it's not really your normal club show, not your normal punk show. So then you kind of have to approach it differently, which we did by including some acoustic songs and just trying to mix it up a little bit, because we are a punk band, a rock band, whatever, but we're also like, we want to communicate our music in a way so that people will accept it and listen to it and check it out. So in that way you are entertaining people, because you want, and ultimately I think we want to make people happy too with our music.
Yeah.
And so finding that balance is always difficult, but having an opportunity to do it in front of like a wide range of people and ages is challenging, but so it's good for us to rise to the challenge when those opportunities come to us, and thank God they still come to us. So.
Yeah.
Well, and it's you guys are going on tour too, right? And like as much as things change, things do stay the same. But like if you don't flex those muscles, if you don't work those muscle groups musically, like how are you going to be able to deliver the kind of show?
For sure.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Has it been a bit of a growth process, so to speak, as far as getting into tour shape now versus, say when you were 20? It takes a little more work, right?
Well,
yeah. Franz, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, we can make that a Franz question.
No. Of course, back when we were in our 20s, we were doing it every day. Yeah. We all lived in a house together, and we would just walk down to the basement and just and rehearse. And if it wasn't a show, we were going on the road or what have you, you know. And nowadays we're all in different parts of the country and we play less frequently, obviously. So we're basically set up to just like get together for a few days, rehearse or hack out a set, and then we hit the road for however long. And that's how it works these days. So it is harder in that sense because you're trying to catch up a lot quicker because, oh shit, we got to be out on the road, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But, you know, earlier days we were playing every day, basically.
And how many songs do you put in the set list? Like, because you want to make sure that you're running hot with the songs you're going to be playing, right? But then also you got to make it interesting for yourself. So, like, how many songs do you pull from like way back in the day? How much are like new stuff? Like where? How do you pull from it, and how many?
Well, that's always kind of a discussion among us because, and also, you know, we kind of have to be mindful that we want to play new songs, but necessarily people might not, if they don't know them, you know, they just want to hear stuff off the first couple of records. I mean, that's kind of like how I am as a music fan. So we know that people want to hear what they want to hear, kind of because we've been doing it so damn long. But
right, yeah.
Also, you know, like we have a new record coming out on Discord, as you know, in the fall. But we're already, like, we went into the studio on Monday and recorded more stuff. So we kind of entertain the idea of playing new songs that are even newer than what's on the new record.
The newest of the new songs is like,
and we haven't even played anything off the new record yet. And so, but at the end of the day, we came to our senses and just played a variety of songs from our records. But unfortunately, we haven't had an opportunity to rehearse the new record yet. And also we're dealt with this situation where we're having to play without our drummer because our drummer is battling cancer. And so we recorded the record with him. We had other guest musicians and other drummers on the record, but the core of the new record is me, Franz, Skeeter Enoch Thompson, and Ken Stacks. So we haven't been able to play any of the new songs yet, unfortunately. And the name of our new record is called DC Special.
DC Special, right? That's one that had there's a Kickstarter at one point for that, I remember.
Yeah. That event really epitomized what that song's about, which is kind of you know, what it feels like for us growing up in DC and what it felt like and that moment, you know, is what it feels like now. And that song would have been perfect to play in that moment. Also, it's a really summer kind of about growing up in the summertime in DC. So unfortunately we haven't played it yet, but it would have been the perfect song to kick off. Right. But you know, people don't know it, so they don't even know that.
Yeah, it'll be the perfect song to kick off. They just aren't familiar enough, so it would be like surprise. But
we have most of our songs are pretty short. So I guess the average set length for us would be 12 to 18 songs.
Right. Yeah, and exactly. And they're not like Joycean epics, right? It's not like Pink Floyd or something. So
no.
Well, and you bring up an important point, too, because no matter how many shows you play or wherever you play, there's always going to be someone that's like, it's their first time ever seeing you, and they want to hear the songs that they want to hear, right? They want they want to hear like something from 1983 or something where so it's like, oh yeah, for you, this is the first time you've ever experienced it live.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
And you got to counterbalance that and also playing the stuff that you're excited to want to present. And so that's why I bring it up, because you guys have, and this is something I always find fascinating with bands that have been operating for a while, is you got to find that balance. And I find it interesting because, especially for a band that, you know, there's notable songs, but like no quote unquote hits. Like Cheap Trick is always going to have to play The Flame, which I hate. I hate that song, but like whatever, they always play it because the moms want to hear it, right? They want to hear The Flame. Yeah. Right, fine. Which you don't have that specific problem, but then there's always going to be like some like 16-year-old punk rock kid that's going to be like only going to want to hear like Still Screaming, and that's it, and that's all they want to hear, and they don't want to hear anything else.
And it's even more of a balance for us this year because, you know, the next tour that we do in Europe is going to be largely festivals, which
Yeah.
Scream has not done a lot of. And you know how festivals go. You get like 35, 40 minutes to play. Maybe you're on and then you're off. So that scrunches the list down even tighter. And what do you choose from there? So yeah, it'll be interesting.
Every time I get up there and that happens, I just have to remember that when we first started out, everyone was just yelling Freebird. So,
and some things never change. There's some solace to that, right?
So, but that's but that was what made playing our own songs so great, because we were just shoving our songs down their throat, and so. That's why for us, we constantly want to be playing new music. For us, we always kind of want to be poking and prodding a little bit and just mixing it up. But, like I was saying, you got to know what's going to make a good show for everybody.
Right, because you want to make sure it's exciting for the audience, but also exciting for you at the same time.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about DC Special, because I think it is so interesting that and I was fascinated by the fact that and I feel like there was a lot of discourse about crowdfunding that some of which was incredibly inane. But I think that you guys it was a great example of something that seemed right and was like, oh no, this is a thing that people want and the community can come together and make something cool happen, which to me is punk rock, right? But not everybody necessarily feels the same way, but it's not like, hey, we want to go on tour and we need a new van. Okay, well, good for you. Get a job, like everyone else. Not to call anyone out or anything. I'm just saying. But I think it was so cool because, and my understanding.
Well, by the way, no, I'm just kidding.
It allowed everyone to, when it was being shared around and stuff, is talk about Scream and talk about these vital shows and these important moments in history, and how the community itself often doesn't get celebrated until it's over. You know what I mean? I'm thinking about Inner Ear is a great example, right? Amazing studio, iconic dude, iconic studio, and then it's only when he said it was closing did everyone start to be, oh yeah, well it's so important. We could have been talking about how important it was while it was around too, I mean, not to call anyone out for that, but I mean, I think that's just human nature now, is that we only want to celebrate things after they've passed.
Yeah.
Right.
So I like that we kind of got to as a punk rock community get to sort of celebrate Scream as and then also there's going to be a new record that comes at the end of this, which is I thought it was a really cool idea and really fitting. So again, with the circumstances involved for recording and whatnot, what was making this record? And Franz, why don't you field this first?
First of all, we started the crowdfunding and the whole idea of doing the record way before there was any talk or knew about the studio closing. It wasn't well into the whole process that we later learned.
To be clear, I didn't mean that those two things were linked. I was just thinking about people only celebrating things after they're already gone. It's just,
yeah.
Let the record show. Sorry, go ahead, Franz.
No.
It definitely the studio closing, and with the city actually was going to be shutting that neighborhood down and condemning the building. So it definitely created some urgency once we got the project going, for sure, because it was our last chance. So it kicked us in the ass as well. But that was always our goal, was to go back to Inner Ear where we started and record another record. And so luckily, it costs money to do that. So at the time, honestly, Discord it doesn't run like every other label, and it wasn't really at the beginning. They were not involved with it. We were just going to do the recording, and they were, as possibly could maybe come out on Discord or maybe somewhere else, but they came into the project after we started recording it. So then now it is going to be on Discord, so that's great.
Yeah, which it is absolutely fitting, right? I mean, of course that makes sense, but it's the kind of thing that, look, in this day and age, you can't count on much of anything, right? I mean, it's what is it? You can only You can only trust yourself on the first 5 Black Sabbath records. Is that what the T-shirt said? And I don't even know about that some days. But anyway,
I never heard that. I never heard that one before.
It's a shirt I saw a dude have, and I was tempted to be like, I'll buy that shirt off you right now. But
right.
I'm sure someone sells them somewhere, so I didn't say that. But
right.
I thought about it. But yeah, like, you know, the idea is that you're trying to like make this like really cool thing that's like celebrating not only the band but where you guys are musically now, because where you are now is like way better, way different than you were like way back in the day, right? Like 40 years ago or something. And you've progressed as musicians, and you want to show that, and you want to like take your time with it, but then suddenly there's almost like a death clock going on it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not to sound dire, but yeah. I mean, does that like change the attitude?
Well, no, I don't. I think we ever thought of it that way. And I mean, the whole thing comes around that, you know, we'd always, even though Scream hadn't been doing anything since 2010, at least recording wise and musically, you know, we're always writing music and wanting to do more. And then, you know, COVID hit everyone and locked everybody down.
Oh yeah, that.
Remember? And which, you know, it kind of forced even more expression as far as writing music and right. Playing around with stuff that had never been hashed out or released or whatnot. And so we were just writing all this music.
We all had the time individually to work on stuff too.
Yeah.
We hadn't had before.
And, you know, Pete and I being in the same city at the time, we could bounce it off each other. He would go into his studio that he would always go to and sing on stuff, and I'd be here at home doing stuff here. And then we started to get together at the rehearsal. I don't remember exactly like the delineation between us, you know, messing with stuff and then the actual idea, hey, let's do a record with this stuff.
Right.
I don't remember how Pete can probably remember it more than I do on that. But then it got to the point where the idea of doing this record.
Well, I've been bugging Ian for a while about doing another record, and then he would always ask me for like, well, send me some songs. And I sent him some songs one time that Franz and I had demoed, but he didn't react really strongly on that. I've been kind of always kind of proposing, and he'd make jokes like, well, you guys don't even live in town anymore, and you know, stuff like that. I don't know how he wasn't really taking us seriously, and you know, and to that point, I guess we weren't that active. We did that record for Complete Control that came out on Side One Dummy. We did a tour of Europe. And we were playing like once or twice a year, played home around Christmas or whatnot. So,
but you weren't like an active band in the sense of like making records and touring and so on. Right. And that's, and DC, especially Discord, like again, the whole thing was like documenting the DC scene. So I get where he's coming from, as much as that probably would.
But I think maybe something changed with him or with the label as well, because if you notice, there's a lot of other bands putting music out on the label right now. So there's kind of resurgence of some energy that's happening. That, I mean, and maybe in one small part we're a part of that, because it's already been over 2 years since we did DC Special, and we just recently finished mastering it and everything for various reasons. But I mean, and that did bring a bunch of people together, and I think there is some even more music coming out from some other bands from our scene, from, you know, that may have been, you know, inspired or motivated to get back together and make music.
Well, and there's still like, I mean, I love that Hammered Holes record. And
that's great, huh?
It's like ostensibly a new band, and like, you know, Alec was good enough to come on the show, and I grilled him about a bunch of stuff. But it's, you know, it's like, it's very vital, and it doesn't, as much as it evokes like the sound, I guess, to some degree, like it's a new band, and it feels like a new band, and that's, it's not just a celebration of like, you know, nostalgia or something along those lines, and like I still get to see them. But yeah, I mean, I feel like it fits very nicely between that, where you get that same kind of kick in the pants energy to something, where it isn't just like, hey, y'all, remember this? You know, nostalgia industrial complex, if you will, right? It's not,
Right.
it isn't that.
No, I think us going there and setting up shop and being there for a week, and then, you know, at different points after that, you could feel that it kind of reinvigorated or re-energized a lot of things going on around there. You had the Soul Side record coming out,
Yeah.
and that's all new material, Hammered Halls. You know, so it felt like we had an effect, you know.
Well, sure, and so then
Definitely you know, it got a lot of people together and hanging, which was good for our little community there.
Yeah, I guess sometimes it's all it takes. You just get people together and like remembering like how great it is to be in each other's company and do cool stuff, right? And then like next thing you know, you're off for the races.
Yeah,
and it's also kind of like, because you know, all the people in the scene have been, you know, coming in and out, or people have shit going on in their lives and raising families and stuff, and then, you know, then you forget where you kind of, you know, that, oh, this is part of me too. You know what I mean?
It's in your DNA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How
it's hard, you know, you get beaten down, but in life, it just the struggle to like make ends meet and, you know, make a living and pay your bills and get your kids through school and all that shit, that, you know, that maybe you kind of, it's easy to lose like where you come from sometime, and also some of the creative things that you might have done in the past, or you just don't have time for it anymore. So
they become a little smaller in your memory, like one of those mirrors or something, where it's objects in mirror, maybe closer than they appear.
Right.
No,
I think it's important to, like, you know, be reminded that there's other parts of you, because there's, you know, it'll serve you, it'll help you in dealing with the challenges that come every day, you know, and there's constantly battles to be fought, you know.
Sure, and it's a part of your identity, whether you're actively doing it or not. But then it can, like, sometimes just, again, going back to the muscle memory of it, it's like, oh yeah, right. This is like a big part of who I am, and like who we all are, and this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of our, and I think as far as our band is, like, I think that's kind of, it's an important thing for us to, as being musicians and being a band, is to bring that to people, and hopefully have that effect where it brings it out of them. You know,
that give and take, right? Exactly. Yeah.
And then, you know, that show the other day that we did.
I saw a picture from Brendan from that. It looked cool. I
was talking to a kid. I was, at the end of the day, I was like walking, leaving the place with my girl, and I walked by this guy, and he's like, "Hey man, that was really cool. I really, really dug it." I'm like, and I didn't really understand what he said, but then I realized he was saying he was going to jail. He's going in prison next week, he said. And I was like, oh man. He's like, yeah, I really needed that. I'm like, he's like, really made me feel something. I'm like, well, what did it make you feel? And he's like, well, you know, I always kind of keep to myself, and for once it really brought me outside of myself. I really needed that right now, and thank you very much. And I was like blown away by that.
Yeah.
It wasn't, for one thing, I didn't expect him to say he was going to jail next week.
Yeah, he'd be like, I'm going to Baltimore. No, I'm going to jail. Yeah.
It had a really profound effect on him.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I hope it maybe gives him some energy to deal with what he's going to be dealing with. But I think that really wrapped up what I want to do as a vocalist, you know, and a singer. You know.
That level of connection, that level of,
and as a band, yeah.
And
go ahead, finish your thought.
Oh no! Please, by all means, hit it.
No, I'm just gonna say I didn't run into him, but there was a guy, and to get back to the point of just how special this whole thing was, and how special coming from a scene can be. Some guy came up to me afterwards and just said, "Man, I can't believe you guys came all the way out here to play a free show, just set up in this park. This really means a lot to me." And I was like, I thanked them and all that. And, it's kind of like, well, that's how we started, was playing for free and other people and everybody having fun, just like this whole thing. And that's, it really galvanizes what you belong to, because it's kind of always been, but even more so now, the music business can be so shallow. And this is actually some kind of concrete thing that, we all are part of. And it will never be recreated to that extent, that scene in DC and the label and the studio, and now all these people lived in that world for many years and still do, and still participate in that manner, you know what I mean? And musically, artistically, and it's really fucking cool.
Sure, and there was a time that you were just playing because you wanted to play. Like, it wasn't like about like, oh, we got to make enough money to like pay for these plane tickets and for this and that, all these other like adult ass logistics that you have to concern yourself with.
I'm trying to stay ahead of the whole social media, because basically you're just trying to sell yourself in a way, and that's
it's gross.
It's hard for us to do that, because I know we have to play that game in a sense, but it's just, we're not used to it. It's not part of our DNA, you know what I mean? And
it was difficult for us with the Kickstarter that way too, but
because it's putting yourself out there. It's putting yourself out there in a very vulnerable way of like, hey, look, we're trying to do this thing. Maybe you want to help us out, and it's what the internet should be used for, is for communitarian efforts like that. But it gets tied up with so much other nonsense, and
absolutely
people again, and we're in a weird situation where the audience has become more important than the artist sometimes, and that's I got a lot of thoughts about that, but that's neither here nor there, and it's hard to navigate, and it's even harder to navigate when you're just like, I'm just trying to like make a record and play some shows, man. I'm not trying to split the atom here,
Exactly.
Speaking of which, Franz, how do you approach like doing guitar parts for like, again, with all you've done?
One track at a time. I can only do one track at a time. I'm sure there's probably somebody out there
with the multi-track mind. No, but I mean, but it's like, you've got a great kind of storied discography, and you don't want to necessarily repeat yourself, but like, are you using modern conveniences to like record ideas and stuff? I mean, I imagine there has to be some file sharing, right?
Absolutely. That's a large part of it, was file sharing, especially during COVID, obviously, and the shutdown. But I guess if you want to break it down, let's say for DC Special, Pete and I had basically 2 years to hash these songs out, and by the time we went into studio, I had pretty much in my mind everything I was going to do, every part I was going to do. Of course, things would change in the studio to a certain extent, but I had it kind of basically all mapped out in my head.
Right.
What I was going to do, what everybody was going to do, and then of course everybody would kind of make their own mark. I do have it's like soloing and stuff like that. If it's not a melody line, I kind of just like, if I don't have anything for, I just wing it and just off the cuff.
right. Just go.
Like the whole, let's say, Fumble record, any of the overdubs, if I didn't do it live, it was just off the cuff. And I'd always kind of work like that. So this was like the first record where I really worked everything out, regardless of how much it might have changed when I went into the studio. But as far as guitar parts, I had everything worked out, what instrument I was going to use and what sound I wanted. And then later, Pete and I got into like, once it turned into a group effort with all these people involved, him and I started going back and forth on, I think this guy would be good for that, this guy would be good, or that girl would be good for this, and that's how that kind of blossomed. It was really one of the most wonderful experiences I've had in the studio in a long time. It was one of the hardest. I mean, my God, we did 17 songs in 10 days.
That's a
And
lot,
this
man.
wasn't yes, and it wasn't just us four. It was us four times 5 or 6 other people that we incorporated into the whole session. I mean, prior to the studio session, the Scream and a few of the people that played on the record, we had like a week of pre-pro, and then we went in there. And I remember early on, even when Ian was hemming and hawing about wanting to do this thing, he was like, "Wait, what? You want to do what? 17 songs in 10 days?" He said, "This is going to be a complete fucking disaster."
Thanks to Pencil.
Because then it wasn't like, Scream wants to come in and record like these 2-minute punk rock songs. Scream wants to come in and have like 6, 7 other people come in and play on various different songs, and we just threw it all at him. And he was like, "Whoa!" So when he said that, it energized us even more to fucking get this thing done. And we, right up to the 12 o'clock hour, we did 17 songs in 10 days. Then we went to our friend's motorcycle shop and played in the shop, had a free show at the garage to top the whole thing off. It was just amazing.
It was a motorcycle shop?
Yeah, Crossroads Cycle in Bailey's Crossroads.
Well, and that's and again, for people there's people that listen to the show that are in bands themselves and they record, and some that aren't, there's music fans. To be clear, it isn't necessarily just the number of songs, it's the amount of like how familiar everyone is with them. And then also, if you're bringing in someone else, there's always an X factor. No matter how great the player is, there's always going to be kind of like, oh, you got to adjust this, or they're going to adjust that, et cetera, et cetera. And that takes a little time. And so it's just a lot. Even
especially, I think in our in rock and in punk, it's not as common. But in other, I think in other genres like jazz or bluegrass and stuff like that, you have more improvisation and experimentation, and you're put in those situations more. But it wasn't really meant to be that way with this project completely. But once we got into it, then we started inviting people to be a part of it and collaborate with it. So there was a lot of like on the spot kind of, give and take and contributions that way. So it was really great.
Well, you got some amazing players too. And I mean, like Joe Lally is like personally one of my favorite bass players of all time. Like that guy's pretty good,
It was an amazing I feel very lucky to have worked with him myself. It was a very insane process doing that song in particular with him. And once you hear the song, it's like it's all Joe. You can hear it's all Joe Lally, and it's he's really into theory and all that. We're in a room, just him and I playing the song, go back and forth. He's trying to figure stuff out.
Yeah,
amazing. It was amazing.
Then that particular song is called "The Flam," and it was a song that my brother had for quite a while, and I wrote lyrics for it quite a while ago. And then we had been playing it acoustically, but definitely once we played it with him, it became and then also on that particular track, Mark Cisneros, who plays in Hammered Hulls,
also a great player,
among others.
Oh my God.
What a cool guy, man. I haven't had him on the show, but
it became a whole nother thing. So that wouldn't have happened if we wouldn't have taken the chance to do that.
By the way, Joe Lally, only person from Fugazi that has not been on this show, and I even brought that up to him. and I don't know why. It hasn't worked out.
That's
that way.
Surprising because he's definitely the guy that loves to talk and especially talk about music.
He's a great talker. I was like, why haven't you done it?
He was really involved, because it's his girl Antonia is the person that has done this book that just came out.
Yeah, the book.
Studio, which you can find at your bookstore. It's on Akashic Books, by the way.
Which is Johnny Temple's deal.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And in fact, his contribution, I think we had at least 4 different versions of that song that Pete and I recorded and played live. And then when we got together with Joey and everybody else, it's a different song entirely now.
Right.
And because Ian put his magic producing spins on, got control of those faders, and it became this whole other animal
Right.
in a very amazing way.
Absolutely. Well, and it's
So that's really cool. I mean, we had one song in 4 or 5 different versions, and then it becomes this completely different song, which would never have happened had it been just Scream going in there and recording.
His job is not always just to be pragmatic, which is what he was actually doing when he was talking about when we're talking about how many songs we're going to do and everything.
Right.
He brings his artistic touch to our music for sure.
Well, and especially and again, no harm, no foul, but he's coming from that's a very pragmatic concern. That's too many songs. Look, okay, it's a reasonable thing to do, but it's also, it depends. It depends on how it's done. And the fact that you guys had so much time to kind of cook on them too, I think helps.
And
right?
and as per normal, he's absolutely correct on all that. As we're still dragging it out, but
right.
hey, but I think it's our job as an artist to push as hard as we can, and then they rein us in. So
and to be honest, I mean, we were doing this prior, all during COVID, So of course, we didn't just write 5 songs. We wrote fucking 20 of them or whatever. And it's I didn't think we'd get through this 7. I thought, okay, let's have all these songs and maybe we'll at least get, 10 to 12 of them really down well.
Absolutely. No. And that's I can recall very recently recording myself where I was like, okay, we have to get 3. It'd be cool if we got 7. That would be really cool. I would feel really good about that. And then it's like, oh, we got 11? Amazing. That's fantastic. But you kind of have to almost set your stretch goals, right? Of okay, well, let's get the important ones down. Let's figure this out, and
right.
Just trust the process and trust the players. And what it helps with you guys have this. Well, and especially I've noticed too with siblings to play, you get a weird kind of telepathy. But how you play with each other, you know what I mean? And that can help too. That can also not help. There's situations that doesn't help. Ask Oasis. But anyway.
Yeah, we definitely have our Liam and Noel moments.
What was that, Pete?
Not physically.
Yeah, I was going to say you learn how to communicate with your back turned.
Right. But I mean, it says something to the fact that all these years later, you're still not only able to make music together, but make vital music together, and do it in such a way that maybe it's not the same stuff you would have written when you were 20, but you have the vitality that keeps it honest and true.
I hope so, and I hope that when this record will come out this fall. Discord hasn't given us a release date, but they tell me it'll be out in late September, October, and I think it'll fit. Fits right in line with all our records, and I don't it's not going to be a huge departure in any way. It'll just sound, our records are kind of all over the place anyway, so I think it's going to fit right in. But it's going to be, I think it'll be a record that's 2023, 2022. It's not going to be a throwback record.
Yeah,
but
well, and I think that's something where it's time. It's time for that for you guys. You know what I mean? And I think back that again, it's not like you guys have been sitting around idle or anything, but it's no, it makes sense for there to be this new record and to be this celebration of community. I think it's kind of important. How did you? So was the original thought that the record would be out in time for this tour coming up? Was that the original thought?
But out in time for what?
For this tour that you're doing coming up?
No, I mean,
we'd hope, but that was a.
No, I mean, I don't know if we really. We weren't. Honestly, no. I can definitively say that because it wasn't until actually in the last couple of months where all of a sudden, when all of a sudden the supply chain issues and stuff have changed, and now. Had always told us it could be next year, like 2024,
right?
If because vinyl so backed up, it's not getting pressed and all that. So, and for us, the key component, the foundation of the record was a vinyl release, and then the other songs would be available digitally, but we wanted it to come out first on vinyl. And so we didn't really know that, it just recently changed where now they could honestly say, we'll definitely have it done in time. They already have some of the parts now, and the record's being pressed, so it's all good.
Well, there was a solid year and a half where basically the answer for what's the ETA? It's I don't know.
Yeah,
it's whatever. It's what? You mean you don't know? And it's oh well, yeah, it's a global supply chain thing, and it's every record is backed up. Everything is it's a whole situation.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what happened. I think maybe there's less. Maybe some of the major labels that jumped into the game there during the pandemic are slowed down now. After that Adele record, they printed 1 billion copies of didn't sell. They tried to cash in on that a little bit, and
I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Oh, that was a big deal. Yeah, I know of at least three Friends bands and label mates records that they were specifically delayed because of that record, and they pressed up some insane amount that basically sat around at your local Target unbought for a while. I mean, I made some joke about it, but it was an industry wide vinyl shortage because they made so many of these in the anticipation that people will want to buy them, I'm sure, and then people did not in fact want to buy them. So, and it's nothing against Adele, it's just that her audience is not a vinyl buying audience. Punk rock, right, in the larger definition of the term, audiences are, right? But Adele, as it turns out, not so much. So anyway, that's a story about Adele. I thought it was a pretty good one, but
sorry, Pete. Continue with your thought.
So, when you are putting this together, it amazes me too that you had to do a large portion of this basically without drums, right? When you're putting it together, that's crazy because.
Yeah,
some fronts.
No, my screen went weird.
Okay, all right.
I mean, a lot of the initial demos that I did were software drums. Yeah.
So you just got that's what I was going for. Is you got to have something to kind of keep the time, right? You got to have something.
Yeah, even if it was just a time reference, stuff like that.
We had sorry to cut you off, Franz, but in the past, with our last record, Complete Control, my brother and I woodshedded that whole record with a friend of ours, Jason Birkin, great drummer, and
from Shiner and Molly McGuire, right? Yeah. I know Jason, great drummer.
Yeah, he's an awesome drummer.
Yeah. And so he helped us craft those songs, but then we ended up tracking it with Kent.
Right.
So, but for DC Special, there was a few things that Franz had demoed, but most of it was with a drum machine.
Yeah, and that's
not a drum machine. Not a drum machine. It was tune track.
Software drums.
It's really intuitive and drag and drop. It's you can play it on the keyboard. It's awesome. It's realistic drums.
Well, I mean I use that stuff myself, and then it's hilarious because what starts off for my demos versus what Dale Cover comes up with are wildly different things, as you might imagine. It's oh yeah, that's way better now. That's good. Yeah, it's all right. But it's interesting to me because I think that there's a certain type of dude that would be coming from where you guys are coming from that wouldn't be adopting those technologies, that wouldn't be adapting in that way. And it feels like it's kind of cool that you managed to keep the heart of what has made Scream interesting and vital over the years, but upped your game for collaboration and writing that are not just 4 people in a room banging it out.
Right.
And is that... Oh, go ahead, Franz. Sorry.
No, you were going to ask a question.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say, so, I mean, but you don't get that instant feedback, right? Like, so for instance, Franz, if you come up with like a killer guitar riff and everyone's like, oh yeah, that's awesome, and you see everyone get psyched about it, then it's like you got this asynchronous communication where you put it in, I don't know what you're using, Dropbox, WeTransfer, so like doesn't matter. Put it into a thing, and then you're like, all right, I guess I'll hear about it whenever they listen to it.
Yeah.
Does that, I mean, do you just have to kind of check your ego at the door for something like that and just kind of deal with the process, or like how are you dealing with that?
Yeah. I mean, there really was no ego. I mean,
Well,
and some of the drums, it wasn't so much playing, but it was trying.
there's one killer song on the new record that is called Hell Nah, and it's awesome song about us, just us talking about today, and like kind of like a song lyrically. It's like on the street corner talking about what's going on around us right now, 2020.
Right.
And us talking about it, talking shit about it, how we would back home. And Franz wrote that the music for that song, and it's just ripping song. And he did it to like whatever you want to call it. I call it a drum machine. You guys call it software.
Right.
But when we got to track it, like Kent didn't play it like the damn machines were. And so
that's real.
But he's not a machine, he's Kent. So yeah, Franz did have to like check himself a little bit on that.
But then it turns, and that's the difference between, making music on like the computer, or like the tablet or whatever it is you're working on, and having, a band.
Yeah, of course. It's whatever you have to work out when you're working with other people. Yeah. It's not a solo album.
Right.
But it wasn't that I disliked anybody's approach, or a lot of time I was trying to, number one, I was kind of married to these songs because I've been listening to them constantly forever. And number two, I had strong opinions on how finished the song already was, or it was kind of like just trying to keep it in the way that because the demo is just the way it flowed. I wanted to at least try and keep it that way. And it was give and take all the time and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it wasn't any butting heads with a dislike in a way, but trying to keep it the way, trying to keep everybody happy, I guess.
Right. Precisely. Well, and it's a fine line.
Yeah.
So it really is. I think that it's interesting to me that I read Dave's book, which I enjoyed. I thought it was good. I thought he treated it well by mentioning how big you guys loomed large to his musical world as a young man, and I thought that was treated very well. Does it ever get kind of annoying to constantly be tied to him, as great of a dude as he is?
No. I think we're fortunate that just like I'm fortunate you mentioned, fortunate to meet Dave Ketchens and play with Dave Ketchens, or meet Greg Rogers and play in Goat Snake with him, and Greg Anderson and Guy, or we're fortunate that we made a couple records with him, and he became hugely successful, and it drew attention to our band, still does.
Yeah, and I mean that part sounds great.
Plus, it's weird, but I think it's a little awkward at times there's just the way it is.
Yeah. And he makes an appearance on the record,
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah, that was really cool. It wasn't something that was planned, or so when he was able to make time in his schedule to be there for a few days, and that was great. And he appears on the record. So that was cool.
Yeah, and Franz, I assume everything's good?
Everything's fine. In fact, when he came, he was very happy that he came down to the studio session, hung out. And
I guess it's been a while, right? I mean,
it's been a while, and not only were we happy that he played on the record, but you could tell he was thoroughly chuffed about the whole thing, and it was something he probably needed to do as well.
Yeah,
I'm sure he felt that way, especially seeing all the old people, and just because that's where he comes from, and it just solidified to him probably even more, and that's, he came back and opened the new 930 Club. I mean,
yeah, which is amazing. That whole thing is incredible.
Part of it all.
Yeah. And I mean, he's a big part of the band, as far as he was a big part of your history too. So it would be it's kind of nice to be able to include him in that. Also, pretty decent drummer.
Once you're playing the band, you're always part of the Scream team.
Yeah,
for life.
It's like being a Jet.
Yes. Once he was in the band, after he was in the band, we never get any more questions about Straight Edge anymore. So it's just
finally, that's all it took, huh?
The first 10 years.
Right. Yeah, I think so, and it's interesting too because the cross pollination to that other world, that more or less bigger rock world, it's brings in new people, and that's great. That's kind of I think there's there's an attitude among some of oh no, it's just for the people that it's for, and should never be more than that. But I think it's kind of nice, again, just going back to the show you just played, seeing intergenerational folks vibing with the music and being a part of this. It's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all.
No.
But also,
that's one.
Oh, go ahead.
That's one of the benefits, of social media. It's just that world that he's in. They know about us now largely because of social media, and
right.
So that's a good thing.
Also, since you guys started off way back when, you got to have a cool name and B, a one-word band name, which is great because now that's almost impossible. So yeah, who knew that that would be such a concern with making music in the future, right?
Yeah. Well, both my brother and I's bands were one-word names: Scream, Wool.
Yeah, I was gonna say Wool. There's a shout out to Wool. Somebody saw Wool in the South Bay and drove down there with Joe Bansuelo. R.I.P. Joe Bansuelo, by the way, great dude. Yeah, again, this is the hardest thing when I got multiple dudes on, and I kind of want to talk about everything for everybody. But yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about Wool, how Wool came to pass, during that time period where there wasn't Scream stuff happening?
There wasn't Scream stuff happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, after we broke up, Pete and I holed up in. Luckily, our sister was living out in Los Angeles at the time. And when the band disbanded and kind of fell apart, and then Dave went up and joined his band. I forget the name of it.
Some obscure brand. Yeah, exactly.
So it was kind of weird. It's kind of funny because, prior to the Scream breaking up, we kind of talked about, we wanted to move out in LA and, find a label because we wanted to put out records quicker than Discord did.
Right.
And so we'd actually talk about it. And it was that summer. It's okay, well, let's figure this out. And
we were actually, not only were we talking about it, but we were trying to, we had been shopping music around, and for a new record when we kind of crashed and burned in LA. Scream had been. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was
at that point,
1990-ish, right? Is that the
something like that? I can never remember.
1991, whatever. And so at that point, I mean, like I said, my sister was already living out here, and so Pete and I were like, well, fuck that. Here's our opportunity. We'll just slum it on the couch at our sister's house and try and figure something out, stay out here, and which led us to staying there. And then, we wanted to continue music. And
Yeah, we hadn't learned our lesson.
I know. What were we thinking?
Yeah, how dare you? How dare you, sir?
Yeah.
Well, so yeah, and that was with Pete Moffat, right? If I remember correctly, that's
Correct. And I believe it was Pete that met Al, right? Pete
from
at
Fast
the-
Pass. Yeah,
Yes, from the at the record store. And that's how we got. No,
Yeah, I think you might be right. I can't remember exactly.
or it might have been at a show or whatnot, but he definitely worked at that. I don't even remember the name of the record store in Highland.
Aaron's Records.
Aaron's Records.
Yep. That's how
And
Al Block was at the show on Sunday.
yeah,
Oh, nice. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool. Yeah, he was
crazy.
there. His daughter just graduated from university there in DC, and him and his wife were up there, kind of like helping her move out, basically.
That's wild. Wow.
Al and Don Santana were the tallest people at the show, actually, too.
Who else?
And Don Z.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's true.
High pockets, we call them. Yeah. Well, and then so at the time, like going back to the time, is it sort of just like, okay, clean slate? Let's just start over without this baggage, and at the time was that the thought process? And again, by the way, also kudos, short, easy to remember, one word band name. Kudos again.
Yeah.
But was that the mindset, or was it just sort of like, oh,
Absolutely. I mean, there was no baggage. There was just like, we wanted to keep doing music and let's put some guys together and do some fucking music. We had, and I will say it was like, we're in Hollywood. We're surrounded by the music industry and a lot of people in and out of it. So it was a concerted effort to try and basically get a fucking record deal so we could live.
Right, and that was London, right? That was London Records, I think that was if I remember correctly.
Well, no, we did. We first were put out, on Buzzspawn.
Oh, sure.
Bongload Records, yes.
Bongwater, yeah.
Bongload.
Yeah, which is I think Bongload's early Beck stuff's on there too. There's a bunch of cool stuff on. At the time, yeah, that's right. Sorry,
Yeah,
this is where me not doing research comes like really the crack show.
It's cool because it all that stuff is. I mean, it was just for us to start another band would be. It's what we know, and it's what we do, and what we love, and so we, we're lucky enough that we were able to get a new band together and get a start making put out a couple 7-inches first. In fact, our first 7-inch was on Fuck You Records, which was Buzz Osborne's label.
That's right, yeah.
And but it was tough at first, to be honest. Like Pete Moffat ended up we ended up having to get on the phone. It would have been a landline at that time.
Yeah.
And call back to DC and try to talk him into coming out, which is what we did.
Yeah.
And because there was no internet, so we did put an ad in like the local
Recycler or something.
Yeah, no, there was a magazine called Music Express.
Sure. Yeah.
Music Express.
And I forget, maybe we put one in the weekly. I don't think so, but I know we put one in Music Express. Maybe we auditioned a few different people. I mean, it's just to show you how bad my memory is that my girl was at the show on Sunday, of course, and she told me that she met Steve Hankson from Minor Threat, and he told her that he was the first bass player in Wool.
What?
And you were like, oh, yeah.
I don't remember that.
I remember jamming but I don't remember that like that clearly. But we played with a bunch of different people.
Before you got Al, you played with other
people.
Yeah,
there was a process.
Right,
that's sure. So that we had to go through. It wasn't easy. And then so we talked Pete into coming out and joining up with us. And then I can't remember, like Franz said, if we found Al at the bookstore or at the record store, or some it's somewhere, I don't know.
Maybe it was the massage parlor. I don't know.
the tall man section of the men's outlet. Who knows?
It might have been.
Definitely.
Maybe he was delivering the LA Weekly just like the rest of us. I don't remember exactly.
Well, and by the way, great monster drummer. I mean, Pete Moffat's such a great drummer, and actually, I was very psyched to see him.
Yeah, and that's why I don't really understand about the Steve Hankinson story, because he's a great bass player, and but I don't, just quite a long time ago. So
yeah, you think you would have remembered that? Yeah, but
yeah.
Yeah, I
Well,
just
that's
thought
funny you mentioned that, because I talked to him at the show the other day at the park. He obviously, he brought something up, not about playing bass, but just, I don't know how we got on the subject, but he did say, yeah, when you guys were first in LA on Satsuma, you guys lived right down the street from me. Obviously meaning that he'd come over many times and hung out, and I didn't remember it at all.
Yeah, obviously made a huge impression. Yeah,
I didn't remember him being there, living there.
That's
but
funny.
anyway, yeah, great bass player. It's how things work out like that. It's weird.
Yeah, and then so when Wool comes together, there's a little Darlin 7-inch. There's a couple, there's a bunch of 7-inches early on before the record.
Before Bud Spawn, yeah.
Bud Spawn, right? That's the is it an EP? I think it's an EP, right?
It's an EP, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, there's like 6 songs or something. Maybe it depends. Whatever. Opinions differ on World Shape, so it's an EP.
I still got a bunch of them in that garage right there.
Copy's still available.
Oh my god,
that's awesome.
he's not kidding.
He's not kidding. Copies are still available. And that's what, 92, right? Somewhere around that neighborhood.
Something like that, yeah.
92, 94.
And that's there are some cool stuff on there. It's not quite as straightforward. There's some kind of like a more out there is probably the wrong term, but it's like, you guys are pushing what you're doing musically like a little bit different. When does, again, knowing full well that this is, I call that era like the gold rush for weirdos. Well, because everybody suddenly everybody was paying attention to punk rock, right? Everybody was trying to make money off punk rock, but nobody understood it. Basically, is how I would characterize it.
Yeah.
And you guys are in.
Well, we'd already went through that shit, because like Ross Records put us out back in the day, because I don't know, I guess they thought maybe they could put out a punk band or a punk rock band, and they just didn't really put it out there and didn't really have any experience with that.
That was the Dr. Dread label, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. It was sort of.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man.
Yeah, it seemed like a bit of an ill fit, but
Well, for us, we didn't think so, because as you know, we reggae music and dub, we love that stuff. And
sure.
We always kind of jammed it and played it, and did our own hybrid of it.
Right.
So, and we and some of the artists that were on Ross, we really looked up to, and were
sure.
So be like all of a sudden invited to be part of that group, that label, and that family of people. It was an honor, actually, but it was kind of, that's what, mistake on our part, and I guess a mistake on their part.
Right. But you never know. I mean, sometimes stuff doesn't.
Yeah, so, but yeah, we've already kind of went through that period with them. And so I guess that, happened again in the early 90s with the explosion of music that happened after, Nirvana, and, kind of blew up the scene.
Yeah, and then suddenly
But
everybody's
there was already like a really, as you know, a really vibrant, strong scene happening all across the country that was fueled by just a bunch of great labels.
Yeah.
Amphetamine Reptile or Touch and Go, Discord.
Oh, I was mail ordering everything. Yeah,
You name it.
I remember well because that was the only way I could get it. It was like,
That's really, it's just was kind of a perfect storm of everything that we had all been doing for a long time. This whole network and collective of music communities around the world that was into that energy and punk rock, punk music. And, that band was basically set to fuse, that kind of, blew everything up that way into the mainstream. But it has certainly been happening for quite a while.
So with Will, when does Chris Bratton come into the picture? I mean, there's because box set is like what 94, right? Is it somewhere around that along those lines is when that comes out.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Sure, sounds good. Yeah,
we just make the music, and then we're already moving on from DC Special.
Yeah. So well, we can get back to. I figure if we're talking about Wool, we might as well finish it off. So that's
I mean.
What I meant was that once we record something, we kind of move on to the next.
It's in the wind. Yeah, it's on.
That's why they call it a record.
Right, exactly, because you're recording.
It's a record. But yeah, I mean, I don't remember the timeline of when Pete left, but obviously, and I think Chris Bratton was actually, we didn't go through the process of putting ads in papers and stuff like that. We were probably referred to him through maybe some of the guys in Bluebird and Sam. Yeah. I think that's how that came about.
He was also in Bluebird.
Yeah, Sam Belby. I think Chris was running around in those circles, if I remember correctly, and that's how that came about. And
yeah, but remember, Chris was playing in Inside Out. Was that
Inside Out? Yeah.
Yes. Hello. Yes.
Who we had toured.
I was gonna get to that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So, but just like in Scream, we really didn't waste too much time of moving on or just getting out and doing things. So the same with Wool. As soon as we found Chris, we were just right back in the mix doing show. And I don't know how many shows we did, and then leading up to the new box set. But at some point, he was in the band now, and we had written a fucking ton of shit, and we did that record box set with Chris, and continued to play after that.
Yeah, and it's kind of like that's a super cool, interesting record. By the way, props for calling like ostensibly the first record box set. By the way, I don't think that's ever. I mean, I love a clever move, and that's a very clever move. It's sort of like, it reminds me of the Cars originally wanted to call their first record the Cars' Greatest Hits.
Okay. Yeah.
Which is kind of true if you think about it. It's like, well, it kind of is, yeah. But it's a similar-ish flex to do it. But I think that Wool record, it's a really underlistened to, overlooked. I was looking for record around that era, and I think there's some bands that kind of bit that style, and I don't know. That's maybe that's neither here nor there. But can you tell me, like, just and we'll get back to Scream in a minute, but like, how did you come to have that be on London? How did that record come together? Because I'm fascinated by it. By the way, Kalinga, I always call that Kauschwitz, by the way, just because of the smell.
Yeah.
Sure.
There's no other appropriate time to mention that, so I mentioned it now. Kauschwitz.
We know that drive well.
Yeah. It's like, all right, everyone, roll up the windows, turn off the air conditioning.
I mean, I tend to write about what I know, what I experienced. So we drove from LA to San Francisco many times.
Anyone that has done that drive knows exactly where Kalinga is.
Yes.
But yeah, tell me about how that record came to pass and how it ended up on being on London. And
I think it came about through, well, we developed a working relationship early on with Rob Schnapf and Tom Rothrock, who were the guys that, had Bong Load Records, and we did those single for them. And then we did a couple singles, and then we were playing around town, and different labels and different managers were, checking us out, and we had a few offers, but London was the one that gave the most complete one, and one that we thought was a good opportunity for us. They had, I think they had recently signed to Meat Puppets, which was interesting to us, and was a band that we respected.
Sure.
And and so I think it may have also come about a little bit through a relationship that maybe Tom and Rob had with London Polygram. I don't know, but they were, that was part of the deal. It's like we wanted stuff to come out on vinyl, and so their partnership with Bongload made that happen. And I think that's also what made the deal happen, was that they were open to doing that where other people weren't.
Right.
Yeah, and that's I mean, there was a time period where I feel like they let some freaks through, through like the larger rock audience at large, and that would have been like what was like Fu Manchu. That Fu Manchu record came out around the same time.
Good band.
Yeah, there was a lot of weirdos getting like on bigger stages. Is the best way I can characterize it, right? So then,
Fu Manchu certainly deserved it.
Absolutely, yeah. And well, I mean, weirdo is a compliment. I don't mean that as a.
And they were one of the bands that we played with a lot at that time too.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah.
And so then, okay, so then tell me about how does Wool end? Like the record doesn't do what some people maybe think it's going to do, right? So how does
I'll
Wool
tell
end?
you. Well, the wonderful thing about the Wool experience, I mean, we're coming out on London. We had all these great opportunities. I mean, after that record came out, we went on the road with Faith No More. We were out there with Rage Against the Machine.
Sure.
We're in Europe doing all these crazy big shows, and it was really good. And we thought, wow, I mean, this record's really going to maybe this thing will get heard by people and maybe sell a few copies. And then just like when Nirvana came along and killed all the metal hair bands in Hollywood, Bush came along, and No Doubt came along and basically buried the Wool record.
Yeah.
And it was all, and it just seemed like the label got less and less interested in promoting the record.
Right.
Basically. And we felt, why kill ourselves here? So we just, at the time, we had this friendship with a studio out in the desert, the Rancho De La Luna, and they weren't going to put out another record. So we thought, well, we're going to go out here and just record this stuff anyway. And that's kind of where we were when the whole thing ended.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was too bad. But we'd already, been through that with Scream,
Sure.
and now with Wool, and then, but at the time, I don't really exactly remember the circumstances, except we were really excited about the new music that we were recording as a band, which ultimately, recently, I don't know if you knew this, but some of that stuff ended up on final release by Dynalone Records.
The Lunar Memento stuff, right?
Yeah.
No, it's cool as hell. I love it.
That stuff would have ended up being the next album, but London did not pick up the whatever you call it for the next record. So then that we pretty much called it a day after that, and then we went on our way and all into other different things,
which are notable in and of themselves, right? I mean, like I love all the continue to be a fan of Earthlings and all things Dave Catching, which I should probably have him back on the show. It's been like literally years, but Goat Snake's cool. That's what, like 96, right? That was after Obsessed broke up. Is that, do I have that right? I think so. Anyway.
Something like that. But all those bands are all tied back to DC.
Yeah.
As far as Goat Snake goes, not so much Earthlings, but the Goat Snake kind of came out of my brother and I's relationship with the Obsessed, going back to when we first started Scream. So, and the people in that band, and playing shows over the years in different formations of the Obsessed, from back when first Scream played in DC only, and then later on when we were in Wool, we played with the Obsessed, a different version of that out here on the West Coast, which then Goat Snake kind of came out of that band. But that also, Goat Snake came about through us with Wool playing with Engine Kid up in Seattle.
Engine Kid, yeah.
I hooked up with Greg. So, it's just a big family tree, basically.
Yeah, everything's like really connected. And then, not to put too fine a point on it, but like what Franz, you played with Dave for a little bit there. That's what. Overall, how would you rate that experience?
Oh, one of the greatest experiences of my life. I mean, what more is there to say? I mean, in every facet, and
I was there for a good bit of it because I was on the road with those guys, learning the ropes of tour management from Gus Brandt, and I had a good seat on the bus there.
Yeah, it seems like it'd be all right.
It was, yeah. I mean, it was life changing, and because of that, and because of my time, the whole Scream history, I started playing with a guy in Japan prior to the Foo Fighters, and that was a whole 6 or 7 year experience in Japan, which was even greater than anything I came through with the Foo Fighters or did with the Foo Fighters.
That's Jay, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not familiar.
Oh, so you did do some research.
I don't do much, but I was like, huh? Jay? Who's Jay? And I don't know still,
exactly.
Sorry. Some of this I just know. Like, if I just know it, then like it seems like I did research. But some of this that I don't. Sorry.
He comes from this huge band in Japan called Lunacy.
Okay.
And they're like the Rolling Stones of Japan. I mean, they sell out Tokyo Dome 2 nights in a row.
Wow.
They play places like that. And he was kind of the punk rock kid. He was into East Coast punk rock, West Coast punk rock. And a friend of mine was actually playing drums on his record out in LA, named Scott Garrett, who's now the new Scream drummer, playing with us now. And I was living out here at the time, and I was going down there to hang out. And I met him, and then he needed a guitar player to also come on and do the tour in Japan. And my name got thrown in the hat, and they chose me. And then I had this whole experience in Japan for years to come. It was amazing.
That seems like that too would be okay. Yeah.
Oh my God! It was Did a few records, bunch of videos, and the usual stuff. As we sit here kind of going through our careers in the course of an hour and a half podcast, I mean, I consider ourselves really fortunate, but also, we put out a lot of we have a good catalog of music between us that represents what we're about as musicians. But at the same time, it's not, I feel like we find ourselves in the company of a lot of musicians that, put the work in and stick in the game long enough. If you're fortunate enough and lucky enough, like have that kind of career where you're playing with different outfits, you're playing with different bands. And thankfully, here we are still getting ready to put out a new record and getting ready to go on tour, and we're still playing it. And there's going to be hopefully more future collaborations that will come out of our
meeting other people on the road that we travel in the future.
Sure. No, absolutely. I mean, and I pretty much don't ever let anyone that's been on one of the desert sessions get away without talking about it. Yours is one of my favorites, Pete. The ones that you're on, and I couldn't tell you. I could not tell you which ones.
That goes back to what I was saying earlier. It's always the first two records, man. Those are that's what everybody wants to hear.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I mean, there's like what is it like? Well, I later became the Queens of the Stone Age song Avon, but I think that when you did it was Nova, right? Like,
yeah.
It was with John McBain and all them.
Yeah.
Who? I love John McBain.
Wow.
I'm from Oakland, and he works at Runs is the holder of the tone secrets of this great store called Starving Musician, and has hooked me up with cool stuff.
Oh wow! Tell him I said hi. I haven't seen him for years, man.
Absolutely, yeah. He's a killer player, killer dude. But anyway, tell me about the desert session. So obviously, like, you've tracked at Rancho before, right? Like you know those guys. There's a cross pollination, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's like that's kind of what the vibe at that studio, kind of, and the welcomingness of Fred Drake and Dave Ketchen, to that studio and the vibe there. I mean, that's kind of how what attracted my brother and I to come out there and work on the wool stuff, which kind of mutated into me collaborating with Dave and Fred. That became Earthlings, and then we always kind of operated that way. That's how the Earthlings create. So I think Desert Sessions was kind of something that kind of came out of those kind of happenings it was just a lot of people like, Wool and Caius did a split 7-inch that maybe you've seen, or if you have a copy of it. And, all those people appeared on the Earthling stuff. And then I think Desert Sessions was just a thing that kind of came out of that Josh started and has continued to water through the years. And, you got to water stuff out there in the desert or it dries out. And, just that's what we do. And I think I was very lucky to be a part of the first couple volumes of that collection of music. And it's been a while since they put a new one out, but I'm sure wouldn't be surprised if there's more down the road.
Well, it seems so interesting because it's just like getting back to the idea of just creating for creating's sake to a certain degree, and like collaborating with people and sort of like taking away expectations for.
Well, sometimes you just got to create to stay sober.
Well, there's that too, yeah. Well, sure, if you're going down that road, yeah.
Straight to be straight, yeah, no, definitely sends us on paths that are good for us. So I think having those opportunities to just improvise and create music with people that you don't even know or don't really have any kind of previous experience with, you just kind of like, bring it right there is really a special thing. And so I think those Desert Sessions records are a perfect example of that. Kind of involved with a similar kind of project that's just, because of the studio, actually Rancho De La Luna is going through, it's like the 30th year of being a studio, and
they're the big record. Yeah, absolutely.
Dave's been putting that together for a while, and in some ways it's not unlike another kind of, collection of songs that are, spontaneously created in that studio. And it's and there's that hopefully will come out sometime in the future. And I've been trying to get my brother out there on it, but he can't seem to find the time to drive the 2.5 hours out there. But,
too far.
He's invited, but so that that's what I got to say about that. My experience at the desert sessions. I remember making those early records there, and one of the great things about those was Fred was still alive, and
Right.
It brings back great memories when I think about him being there, and so yeah, it's a great time in my life, which I really needed at the time because Wool had ended, Scream had ended, and I was kind of like trying to figure out what I'm going to do and musically. So I was lucky to fall into another family of musicians that kind of accepted me, and I became a part of that.
Yeah, and so what's the path to Scream getting back together now? This I'm a little less clear on, because I know there was like a kind of like there was like some one-off charity thing or something along those lines, like sometime back. I might be screwing this up.
we never really, not stopped playing together.
Yeah, you didn't really break up, but I mean, like, as far as like becoming more active as that band, right?
Yeah. We did a few, like obviously with my brother and I living in California, and Enoch Thompson and Kent
Skeeter.
living in DC. Yeah. And, we could only get together every so often. And so we're not rich folks. And so we can't travel back and forth unless we got something that's going to pay the bills or make us at least at break even.
That's real, man. That's real. That's real.
Real.
So we would, play when we could, but it wasn't really until we did that record for Complete Control, which, most of the time when we would do an event at home, there would be some sort of fundraising aspect to it, but it would also pay the bills. So, but, I don't know, when we got together and did the Complete Control record and did some touring, we definitely have been playing regularly every year a little bit. So that was basically it. But, to lead us to right now is just was basically the goal of making this record again, and then play some shows around it. So but that's what we hope this record will give us an opportunity to take another circle around the sun there.
Well, and I like that the way you guys have done it has always been like very sustainable and realistic, but like also aspirational as far as you're doing what you can when you can, right? And there's something to be said for that. And I think that American media, especially,
that's all we can all do,
Sure, but I think a lot of music media are really kind of poisoned by the idea of the big what's it, the Cameron Crowe movie, Almost Famous, right? Where everything's got to be like, this is the way that you're a band. It's like, well, no. There's not like any one way to be a band, and also like that's a pretty antiquated, like not a model that isn't really worked for like 99% of bands. And that's why it's exciting, and why it was exciting to me when I saw the whole DC special thing. I was like, oh, that's killer. They're making a new record, and it kind of seems like a celebration of like everything that came before, while not being like just nostalgia.
Yeah, well, thank you for putting it that concisely. Yeah. That's exactly it. And you be the judge when it comes out.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we'll see. Maybe I shouldn't speak so soon. Huh? But
me, I think people that you doing this podcast, us as musicians, people that are tuning in right now, we're all music freaks. We love music. It's a big part of our life, and also what the music speaks to us and what it says for us, and it kind of gives us our raison d'etre, and so I always can't wait for new records from my favorite artists and people that are peers or bands that I really love or whatever, and so I'm hoping that that's how our new record is received, and I hope that it still is, speaks to people now and is relevant and in the conversation.
So where's the best place for people to find tour information?
Well, I mean, we don't have a website, but
I noticed. You know what Mike Watt says about that? It's like having your own fanzine, and everyone should have their own website. He's very didactic about it, if you can imagine.
Yeah, well, there was a time that we had one, but we post about it on Instagram, and
we have a presence on Instagram and social media.
We do have plans to do some touring later this fall, but they're not finalized, so we don't really have anything that we can talk about right now. But we will be doing some touring this fall, and after we do this European run, and especially once the record comes out into next year, we'll see what happens.
I did not actually realize there was a band Instagram, so that's my bad. Sorry about that. But
okay.
I'm now following you, so you're welcome.
It's on our Facebook page too. There's you'll see posters of the tour in Europe. The different festivals that we're playing.
Well, and there's a lot of European listeners to the show too, so I bring that up because
I need to be more. We need to be more active about that stuff, but it's not like a big. It's not. It's also the whole social media thing. It's kind of relentless to kind of keep that up, and it's not really why we do what we do, but it's kind of a necessary evil. So we'll do what we have to, and especially when you have people that are putting on shows for you, that are putting in the effort to have you in their town, and there's a financial investment that people make in you. Then you have to you got to do your part. So it makes sense to me on that level.
Absolutely.
I mean, come on, give us a break. I mean, we finally have a PR person, and we never had one ever in Scream. We did have somewhat of one during Wool, but not for Scream until now, basically.
All right. I'll cut you some slack. No, I always, when I put up the show notes, I'll link to all the various things. So I'll make sure that people get links to that, because what I would hate, and this unfortunately happens all the time, touring in 2023, be like, hey, come to, include city here. We just played there yesterday. So it's like, and they don't hear about it. It's everybody must become.
Well, we'll let you know when we come into Milwaukee.
Yeah,
I'll be there, man. I'll be there.
What should we play?
That's a good question, because there's a few. You should play X-Ray Arcade. That's probably the best vibe, I think. For we're playing with the Poster Children coming up soon. It's it's all ages, great, and B, the people there all come from music, so that's that always that counts for a lot.
What's the cap on it?
500, 600, maybe. I don't know.
Oh, it's kind of big.
It's
I think
maybe it's not.
Sweet spot's 300 to 500.
Yeah, it's bigger than Cactus Club, if you know Cactus Club. Oh, you know what? I'm tripping. It's capacity 275 apparently. Okay, I don't know. It just seems like 500 to me, I guess. The X-Ray's great, and I'm not getting paid to promote that, but I.
Did somebody just text you the capacity?
Yeah, no, no, that'll be amazing if so. Though I turn my notifications off when I'm doing this. Otherwise, it's like bing, bing, bing. It's like I swear some people listen to the show, and rather than ever be on the YouTube and comment, they give me their thoughts as it's going. It's like, I'm doing the show right now, right? And I can't respond to you. But anyway, no, I'm excited to see you play whenever that happens, because I've actually never seen you play. So that would be pretty killer, and I'll do my best to be the megaphone for that.
That would be cool. Yeah, I was just in Milwaukee not too long ago, but working at the rave, of course.
The rave, sure, yeah.
But that's a little big for us.
Yeah, yes, and there's a lot more I can say about the rave, and we will save that for another time. Last thing, and I almost pivoted to this when you said it, because I'm not sure if you're aware of this or not, Pete, but this is one of the questions, the canned questions that I ask, and you can choose to interpret it however you like. The question is, why do you do what you do? So, Franz, why don't you go first? Why don't you answer that first?
Because it's inside me, it just, music's constantly going through my body. It's just, there's always a harmony in my head.
Yeah, that's a good song title.
There you go.
And a great band.
Yeah, I love Buzzcocks. They're great. Pete?
Well, ever since I was a little kid, I just always wanted to be on a podcast like this. So,
you play a long game, my friend. Wow. Long game.
So look, this brought me here. That's what I've been working for.
Follow your bliss is what I say.
Yeah. Follow your bliss.
Fantastic. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Thanks for spending so much time with me. I hope the tour is killer. And yeah, don't be a stranger. Come back on.
Milwaukee.
Don't threaten me with a good time. All right, dudes. Take care.
All right, man.
You too, man. Thank you very much.
All right.
Bye.
There they go. Band of brothers. Pete and Franz Stahl. Awesome dudes. Hope you guys enjoyed that as much as I did. Let's actually hear a couple Scream tunes. How about that? Sounds good? Good, because that's what we're going to do.
America, summer 1981. Where next? Gonna be the headline, tell them what is real. It's eating the shape that you got feel. You think we got the great society? Listen to us now before they bury me. Better than the TWSA. Yeah, 7 o'clock, have a nice day. Social disintegration ain't the way. The next generation is like yesterday. And you
All right, that was Wool. Again, one-word band name. How awesome. It's Kill the Crow. That's off the Wool record. Box set. Which is great. Wildly underrated 90s record. And before that, we had a Scream twofer. It was Bedlam. And before that, Came Without Warning. The first two songs on Still Screaming, which, by the way, would have been a great name for the record that is just coming out now, but it was their first record. So there you go. That was Pete and Franz Stahl. Awesome dudes. Please, 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 please follow them. Scream Band DC on Instagram. Scream DC on Twitter. They're on Facebook as well. I don't know what the URL for that is. I assume Scream DC. I'll put it on the show notes. Go see them, especially if you're at any places they're playing. Of course, the name of this show is Conan, Neutron, Protonic, Reversal. Thank you so very much for listening to it. This show airs normally Thursdays, 8 Eastern, 7 Central, 6 Mountain, 5 Pacific.
And Mrs. America, all the ships at sea.
YouTube and Twitch streaming live.
Anyone within the sound of my voice.
Podcasted later, ProtonicReversal.com. Archives, always free, no ads, no sponsors, no kidding.
I've got 50,000 watts of power.
But if you like the show and you want to get episodes sooner, you can do so. Patreon.com/ProtonicReversal. $1 a month will gladly achieve that goal, and you end up helping this show out. Also, thanks everyone for sharing the episodes around, subscribing to your platform of choice,
into electricity. Can you hear me now?
leaving a review. It's silly, but it helps.
Out on Route 128.
Stay safe out there.
Dark and lonely. I got my radio
Check you later.
on. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Welcome to my top 10. I'd like to thank our sponsor. But we haven't got a sponsor. Not if you were the last man on Earth. She was prepared to prove it. This one goes out to a special girl. But there is no special girl. It's the end of radio. The last announcer plays the last record. The last what? Leaves the transmitter. Circles the globe in search of a listener. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? really broadcasting if there's no one there to receive. It's the end of radio. As we come to the close of our broadcast day, got my radio on. Can you hear me now? This is a test! If this had been a real emergency,